Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-hosts, Russell Jackman and Mike McDowd. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a trivia question. Again, today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. We got to keep you in suspenders. Got a lot to talk about. In the next segment, we're going to introduce our guests that Mike has been kind enough to get for us. And I know Russell wants to talk about the NFL trading deadline coming up, which will be very interesting because there's been a lot of injuries on a lot of teams. So it'll be kind of, trade one guy who's got a thigh injury for another one who's got an arm injury. I don't know. We'll figure that one out. And the NBA is starting to get in full swing now. So Russell, you'll have to tell us who you think the two finalists will be. Russell's pretty good about that.
Six and one Warriors.
And let's not forget the freaking Dodgers won the World Series.
I would like to forget that completely.
Yes.
I'd like to forget that completely.
I know Russell didn't like either the Yankees or the Dodgers, but boy, Freddie Freeman, holy smokes, that's gonna be like another Mr. October / November, huh? All right. So, are they favored again next year?
Why not?
Usually
The Dodgers? Why not?
Yeah, why not? Okay. All right. And then, Mike, why don't you tease the audience as to who our guest is going to be in the next segment?
Well, he's a great guy from the Golden State of California. Turns out him and I have a little something in common. He's a guy that's very humble, would not really even tell you. He told me he played a little high school football. Well, that's nice. Well, it turns out, and I'm just a little teaser. Turns out he had a little more successful career than that. Not only did he play high school football, he played collegiate ball, and then he and I have to keep his bio very short. He says he played the National Football League, and his name is Harper Lebell. We're going to talk to him, and he's something else.
All right, audience, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We are going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown along with Mike McDowd and Russell Jackman. And we have a special guest. Mike, would you introduce our guest, please?
Certainly will. And before we introduce our guest, I just want to give a big, hearty, warm salute to our United States military who watch this show, who listen to this show, because without you great folks, we don't have a nation, especially on this election Tuesday. We especially are mindful of your service. Thank you. God bless you. And you're the best of the best. So, yeah, thank you.
Good intro.
Our guest is a very interesting man. It turns out that him and I have something in common. We spoke prior on the phone, and he said, because I was actually a guest on his show in Atlanta. And he said, well, yeah, I played a little football. Well, that's nice. He was very nice, very nice. Kind of just was, it was like we knew each other for years. And that's good. And I said, well, where are you from? He's all Southern California. I said, oh, really? Whereabouts? He's all Sherman Oaks. I'm all, where'd you go to high school? Notre Dame High School. I'm in Notre Dame High School of Sherman Oaks. I said, Harper, I was born in Sherman Oaks, Doctors Hospital. I know the world cares, but we care about Harper. And so he went to Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, one of the great Catholic schools there. I said, you played high school football? I said, how'd you do? He said, pretty good. Oh. He said, growing up in Southern California, you probably want to play for SC. He's like, yeah, I did. Or what about Notre Dame? Yeah, but they gave me no love. I said, well, did you play anywhere else? It's all Colorado State. I say, hey, home of the Rams. That's a great program. He's pretty good. He's fourth all-time on the Colorado State history list as a tight end, as a snapper. And then not only that, he barely mentioned this. Oh, by the way, he played in the National Football League for, what is it, Harper, 11 seasons?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And you played for several teams. The team that you played for the most, and we'll run down some of those teams, was the Atlantic Falcons. So I'm guessing that you consider yourself overall an Atlanta Falcon.
Yeah, they signed me to a 2-year deal. Everyone else was 1. So I was newly married, and my wife said, hey, let's buy a house here. And if you know anything about real estate in California, which I know you do, we got a 3,000 square foot home, brand new, $159,000. That was more cluck for your buck to rob from Colonel Sanders. So we decided to invest in this area, and we've been here ever since. How about that?
Wow. How long ago was that?
I got here in 1991. I signed during the off season. I played in '89 in Seattle. 1990 was with Philadelphia, the Eagles, and Buddy Ryan that was his last year. We lost our playoff game to Washington. They fired Buddy about 36 hours later. But Atlanta, free agency was a little bit different. They had what was called Plan B. You keep your top 35 players on each roster, and then if you're number 36 and you're unsigned, or all the way down to what back then 44, 45 guy dress with a little bit of a practice squad, 4 or 5 guys, they were all free agents. They can go wherever they want.
And we've got to keep this interview in context. Here's why, Russell and Edward. What you're not knowing is that Harper, and we are going to get some of the how do you say this? He grew up in Southern California. There's a couple key questions I want to ask him about Southern California, but before we get to that, Edward, Russell, how many? Hold on. Harper played football, basketball, baseball, and by the way, he ran track. How many 4-star athletes do you know? I know nobody. Do you know anybody who?
1 or 2, yeah, maybe.
I don't know anybody. So Harper, and not only that, guys, Harper did not play his freshman and sophomore years of, was it football only? Because you had some sort of, exactly what happened. It's very interesting. I mean, how many guys do that and play in the NFL?
Well, I don't know what the statistic is, but a lot of baseball players or just younger kids will know what Osgood Slaughter is. They call it a disease, but that was for me, it was in my knees. I was a catcher in Little League and Pony League. And when puberty kicks in with the growth spurt that you have, and then playing baseball and doing all that pressure on your legs, something had to give, and it was my knees. So my mom took me to Dr. Frank Jobe. Many will know him as the initiator of Tommy John surgery. It's named after Tommy John because he was number 1. Many people don't remember that it didn't work the first time. They took a cadaver and they had to do it again. So Tommy missed 2 full years before he was able to pitch again. But Frank Jobe was the guy that did that. And my mom didn't know any better. She just said, well, I've heard of him. Let's go see him. He was and Dr. Curlin were the 2 Dodger, Angels, Lakers, Kings, Rams, all the sport teams out there. That's where they went. So Frank said, Mrs. Lebell, my recommendation would be that we refrain from allowing Harper to play athletics for 1 to 2 years. Well, I heard 1 and my mom heard 2. So she won and I ended up missing my freshman and sophomore year.
You know, it's interesting. When I was about 12 or 13, that was, quote, going around, because all the boys were starting to grow. And I had like just a mild case of it, and it hurt. And some of my friends, especially the ones who were really good in basketball, they started growing too fast. And it's amazing. If you've never had it before, it's very painful, right below the kneecap. I remember that.
Yep. And so that the Dr. Jobe said, let the pain be your guide. In other words, we're not telling you not to run around, but don't do too much. And so actually that helped me in a way, but it also restricted me. And weightlifting wasn't the same then as it is now. I mean, we had one of those universal machines where you could do a hip sled and tricep pull down and whatever you call a bench and whatever else that they had, you could do pull-ups. And that's it really for the whole weight room. So I didn't do a whole heck of a lot of the hip sled.
It's pretty smart. It's almost like I knew some guys in high school who, one kid could throw almost 90 miles an hour, and he got recruited by the White Sox, and they blew his knee, blew his arm out. Because he's too young throwing that fast. So it's the same sort of thing with that Osgood Slaughter. Hey, let me ask you, this is before we go to a break here, because Mike introduced you as both a long snapper and a tight end. I mean, I'm trying to think do I know anybody who does those 2 positions? I mean, it's wide receiver and tight end, I understand, but a long snapper and a tight end, that's kind of an interesting
usually see either a lineman, offensive or defensive lineman, and or a linebacker. Steve Diossi, who played for 100 years in the league, and his son Zach ended up playing for another dozen years or so. more linebacker type stuff. But because of my baseball ability, I was a catcher and I could throw. I couldn't throw strikes. That's why I was a catcher. But I could throw a football. And that to me, during those 2 years, I was a manager in high school. And I asked the head coach one day, what do you need me to do to help out? And he goes, go over there and go help our kicker out. And we had a very good kicker. And I held for him for a little while. And then the quarterback, who was the real holder during games, he goes, I got this. And then I said, well, why don't I snap for you guys? And it started from there, just in practice, 7 yards, then to the punter for 15. And I kind of learned that I could do it. And then in games, when I finally could play, I could do it. And then that helped me in college to get on the field. So I didn't redshirt, but I got to play all 4 years of Colorado State. Go ahead, Mike.
Harper, in 10 seconds, what was your best sport? You're probably going to tell me it wasn't football.
Well, the one I loved the most was hockey. And in Los Angeles, Marcel Dion was the only name in hockey. So go figure, I picked the wrong sport. But we can talk about that another occasion.
All right, you guys ready? We're going to go to our first trivia question here. It's funny, I got two questions. The first two questions have to do with presidents. The next one is something to do with music. Okay. Who was the first U.S. president to appear on TV? All right. And
First
again, don't say anything yet. Remember, the rules are that our hosts and guests can't say anything until we get back from break. That's our trivia question. Who was the first U.S. president to appear on TV? All right. That's our trivia question. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We are going to be right back.
All right.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Russell Jackman, Mike McDowd, our special guest, Harper Lebell. Our first trivia question, who was the first U.S. president to appear on TV? Anyone?
Herbert Hoover?
No?
Thomas Jefferson?
A little bit before his
He
time.
had his own podcast, didn't he, Mike? I think I saw
he
it.
had his own podcast.
It's
That is
very-
correct.
His
very
website was a big
Red,
help.
White, and Blues, my story of the Revolutionary War. I am going to go, I don't have a final answer at this moment, but it's either Truman or Eisenhower. And I'm thinking, I know I've seen video of Truman, especially after the war ended. So I'm going to say Harry S. Truman.
Actually, it's in between those, Hoover. It was Franklin Roosevelt.
It was FDR. Well, okay.
It was
Well,
FDR,
Didn't know
yeah.
the TV was invented by then.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
the
you know-
fireside chats were radio only. So that's
True.
why I avoided him. But
Gotcha. Well, when you're president for 12 years, you kind of figure you're going to be, kind of around the whole gambit there. Excuse me. So, Mike, reintroduce our guest, would you please?
Absolutely. Special guest today via Atlanta, Georgia, USA, home of Coca-Cola, one of the great American products. Talk about American exceptionalism. That's it. Harper Lebell, he is from Sherman Oaks, California, went to Notre Dame High School. Even I get giddy saying that because that's where I would have went to high school. If I didn't go to Terra Linda High School up in Marin County, but went to Notre Dame. They are the home of the Black Knights. Then went on to Colorado State, became a long snapper and tight end in the National Football League, played 11 seasons. It has a talk show in Atlanta on 92.9 The Game. So you know why he can speak, okay? He can speak. He does not have a face for radio. And on top of this, he's been the color analyst for Georgia State University. And so you kind of do it all. Before we talk about that, you grew up in Southern California. The key question I have for you, Harper, my friend, is I'm sorry, but there's nothing better than a Bob's Big Boy hamburger with a chocolate milkshake. And if you tell me but you're probably going to say no. I think you have another answer, don't you?
Well, my junior year, yes, it was Bob's Big Boy right there on Van Nuys Boulevard. And then after you go, and then you don't want to be seen with, when you're a senior, you don't want to be seen with the sophomores, and I went to Tommy Burgers and I'd get a chili cheese only. That was high life in it for me. It was about $3. I went from $3 to $4. I had to ask my mom for more money to drive a little bit further and go to Tommy Burgers. And that's when gas was about 85 cents a gallon back in the day.
Wow.
Uh,
Bring back
you
memories.
know, the beauty of Southern California. We could do a show on that growing up there and all the. That's a tough place to grow up. I mean, here you are, a good-looking guy in high school, and I won't even get into the other things in life. But you know, you obviously were a guy that had a night. You missed your freshman and sophomore year of high school. You then got some love in football. I know there were some schools that you were certainly interested in going to, but Colorado State apparently gave you the most LOVE, and you chose to be a Ram. Why is that? And you had a lot of success there.
Well, it's not as flattering as you make it out to be, Mike. But I didn't miss my freshman and sophomore. I just didn't play football either of those years. I started playing baseball and basketball when I could. And long story short, I had a different head coach. My junior year, we had a quarterback that went to Stanford, and a defensive end that went to Princeton, and some other guys that were really good football players. I think the recruiting process would be if a coach came in from, let's say, back then Pac-10 school, and they wanted to ask my coach about our quarterback. Depending on the answer, before they left, they go, well, who else do you have that we might want to recruit for next year? And so he mentioned me. Then he was no longer the head coach. We had a new guy, and it didn't work out the same way, and he didn't do anything to get me recruited. So really, I'm a guy that basically fell into Colorado State's lap when they had another person decommit, and they needed a body, and a coach had remembered from the year prior that I was on a list of players to watch. So really fortunate for me that even though I wasn't highly recruited at all, that someone saw me, and next thing you know, I went there. They were happy enough to talk to me further about whether or not I would want to play and offer me a scholarship eventually, which saved my parents a boatload of money back then. So everybody was happy.
So how did it go from Colorado State, which is not a big school? How did you get recruited for the Seahawks? I think you said was your first team.
Well, actually, I was drafted by Kansas City in 1985, but I had hurt my foot and didn't play the last 5 games of my senior year. So my numbers were down, and then I went to the combine, and I didn't run very well. So they said, Kansas City, that is, well, we want you to play center because we know you can snap. So you just play center, which I'd never done before. So I got as big and heavy as I could get. I'm 6'4". I was about 268, and I'm still 20 pounds lighter than the next smallest offensive line on their roster. And I'm going against Mike Bell and Bill Moss and Art Still every day in practice. So it didn't last very long. Let's put it that way. I was cut, released, let go. I had a one-day workout with the 49ers. It's amazing seeing Bill Walsh write up Razor and Lightning and Omaha and Thunder, the different plays that they were running back in those days. And I get a tap on the shoulder, and the trainer goes, "Hey, you haven't had your physical yet. You need to come with me." And Bill acknowledges, like, get this guy out of here. And he finished the meeting, and there's Montana and Rice and, Randy Cross and all these other great 49ers in the room. And I didn't pass my physical. I told the trainer that I had pinched a nerve in my neck while I was lifting. I go, yeah, it's a little sore when I do that. Reminder to self, don't do that. Just don't do that. But different places where I was cut, released, let go. And Seattle had an opportunity in the spring. They brought me in. They looked at me for, 15 minutes. I snapped in the rain. And next thing you know, when training camp starts, they get one of their guys hurt, and they brought me in. And next thing I know, I make the team.
Wow. Well, but then you got to stay on the team. I mean, right? Because you still have to prove yourself, as the season goes on.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Yeah. You're always one play away, and a good general manager and a good head coach are always in communication with one another. What happens if this guy gets hurt? What happens if he drops a pass or, doesn't make a tackle? Who are we going to bring in to keep the team rolling? And fortunately, I was a victim of that in a good way at the beginning of the year. And I played my way onto staying on the team and keeping my job throughout it. And next year, I was Plan B free agent. Got to go to Philadelphia, pretty much do the same thing. But in the snapping world, the only people that are talking to you are the reporters after you mess up. So it was good for me to not get talked to or no communication with the press other than ask how you're doing and whether or not, they have a good day.
Well, Harper, you're a warrior when it comes down to playing football. You're gritty, you're determined, you're tough. That's the only explanation that I see for your career. You played you played the freaking National Football League. I mean, Edward, Russell, and I, we get to live through you. So, what was your motivation and what was your secret to success surviving that long of a career? Because the average, a couple of years in the NFL
Three to
sometimes,
four.
and
Yeah,
but you 11 years. Kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, the secret sauce is, I believe hard work always pays off. There's a video before he died of Kobe Bryant being asked, how'd you do it, Kobe? And he's at a gym where his daughter is practicing in the background. You can't see her, but she's there. And he goes, well, I'll give you my daughter as an example. Before practice that we're at right now, she practiced for an hour beforehand. And now she's practicing. When we go home, we're going to go eat, and then I'm going to take her to the gym by the house, and she's going to shoot some free throws and work. So every day she gets about 3 hours in, where the average kid may get 0 or only 1 hour. And if you do the math, is what Kobe says, it has a tremendous impact a week, a month, a year from now. She's put more into it. And that applies to so many things. I was reminded years ago, if I studied Shakespeare for 1 hour a day, by the end of a year, I would be a renowned worldwide expert on Shakespearean theory because I would have spent that time investing it into just him. So whether it's math or science, I know you have a military audience, man, learn what you're doing and focus on, if you're repairing trucks, learn what that applies. And then when you're done, guess what? You might end up owning your own business because all the skills that you've learned while you're doing other things. So for me, that was applicable.
That's great.
Obviously, God blessed me in many different ways. My whole reason for being in Seattle was an absolute answer to prayer. So a lot of different things go into it. There's no one specific, but when you're ready to go through the door, be ready and walk through it. Don't stumble over it and don't go backwards. Those are some things for me, Mike.
That's great. That's great advice. Yeah, I love that. You guys ready to go? That's a good way to enter into our new our next trivia question here. All right, and just happens to be another question on presidents. Which president served the shortest term in office? And extra credit if you know why, like what happened. All right. Kind of a strange way of asking, but there are specific kind of interesting circumstances to this one. Okay, so which president served the shortest term in office? Why don't you email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to that question. When we come back, we want to talk a little specifically about football. I know Russell wants to bring up trade deadlines and all that, which is kind of interesting because guys getting hurt. And Harper, you can kind of speak about that because you sort of had that issue going on with yourself during your football career. All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Do not touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd, Russell Jackman, our special guest, Harper Lebell. Second trivia question. Which president served the shortest term in office?
I think it's Grover Cleveland.
No. Actually, he served 2 different times.
Oh.
No.
Well,
William Henry Harrison, he served 32 days. So what happened was he gets inaugurated and he decides that he's going to be a real man. So he's going to give a 2-hour inaugural address in the wet, freezing weather without a jacket, hat, or gloves. Sounds like Bud Grant. And he should have listened to his mother because he succumbed to pneumonia a month later. So he from March to April of 1841. That's why a lot of people don't remember him. He was the first president to die in office. But don't worry, next time we'll have a more upbeat question. All right. Now, Russell, I know you wanted to talk about the fact that we're getting close to the deadline, aren't we? For NFL
Well, the first
trade?
thing I want to mention is that I got back and performed again as Buddy Santello, my wrestling manager character for the festival in Gilroy, the Latin American festival that they had in Gilroy. And we
I forgot,
had,
let me interrupt you. So Harper, what we forgot to tell you, in addition to Russell being a computer expert as well as an attorney, he actually, you ever see wrestling on TV, and you got those managers who come in, and the managers who are like the bad guys. On wrestling on TV, well, that was Russell with his buddy Sotelo, aka. Go ahead, Russ.
yeah, no, there was a huge festival in Gilroy, and they took up the intersection between 6th Street and the main drag. So we had a city block all to ourselves, and probably had about 500-600 people watching us perform, maybe close to 1,000. So that was great. That was a great event. So probably
did you get thrown from the top rope?
Oh, I'm not taking any. I'm getting shoulder surgery next week. So you probably won't see me after next week. I'm going to be off the show for a little while.
No. At least. How did you? How did you get back into character?
Oh, it was easy. I told everyone in Gilroy about how much I hated garlic, and people. Yeah, that was an easy way for people to get hated by the Gilroy crowd. Just tell them how much you hate garlic, and that will make you an enemy of everyone.
At a garlic festival, yeah.
In that area, yes, absolutely.
That's great. I love. I hope someone filmed it.
Oh yeah, I have. Stuff's on YouTube.
Okay,
I can send you some links.
Nothing like garlic milkshakes, by the way. Love those garlic milkshakes. They're delicious.
Garlic milkshakes.
Yummy. Yeah, they're so good. And
yummy.
So tasty too.
But meanwhile, the trade deadline's coming up, and in just a couple hours, I think by 1:00 today, it'll be expired. So I don't know if the 49ers, everyone's talking about, the 49ers have made a lot of big trades in the last few years, whether it was for Chase Young, or whether it was for Christian McCaffrey. They certainly have enough injuries and needs on their team, but a lot of other guys have been snatched up too. So I don't really know if who the Niners really want is going to be available. But do they get a receiver to replace Ayuk? Do they find a guy to replace Hargrave? Do they go outside the box and get another running back? I really don't know where the Niners are going to go as far as that trade.
Well, let me ask Harper this question, because I'm trying to think of if I'm a player on, because it could go either way. If you're on a team that's like, let's say Kansas City right now, who's 8-0 or something, right? And you're on that team, and then you find out you're getting traded to like the Carolina Panthers, versus if you're on like the Panthers and you find out you're going to get traded to a team that's 8-0. I mean, can you walk us through the mentality of that? Because you never know if you're going to get traded or cut.
Just a few days ago, the Panthers traded one of their wide receivers. They get a 6th rounder for him. I'm sorry, a 5th rounder, but they also had to give up a 6th. So it's the part of what I was going to ask Russ is how it has changed in recent years to where football was kind of the sport that you didn't have to worry about a trade if you were on anybody's roster. It was kind of a safe place to be because nobody really did it, and you couldn't figure out the value of a guy. Now, when you throw the cap into it,
right,
and how much money that it either costs or save you, like when Chase Young came in and they were working on Bosa last year, I was thinking, how on earth are they going to manage all this money? The 49ers specifically is what I'm talking about, and make it work. It worked for this year, but are they borrowing from Peter to pay Paul for years down the road with the way that they do that from a business perspective? That's obviously a consideration. Mike, what do you got?
Oh, nothing. I got it. I'll Valdosta State. I just took my hat out of my number one team in Division II football. Now to Harper's question. Harper had a great answer. And finish up, please.
Well, I didn't see the hat. I thought you were going to show me. Was a player, or was there something that?
No. I was just being a smart aleck, and Valdosta State is in Georgia. And,
so it's like that Cheech and Chong where he's writing a song, and then, hey, while you were doing that, while I was listening to you, I wrote another song. That's pretty cool. But
I mean, but I've got props, Harper. You'll like this one.
Bananas. Yeah.
Being a banana.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to cut you off football, but
no. Well, question to Russ, my question back to Russ would be, the recent trend of making it a little more, not just popular, but more applicable to the business of the game. Hey, I really do need a wide receiver. I need a cornerback that can start in my roster that will help get us to the playoffs versus a team like we mentioned, Carolina. Throw New Orleans in right now. Would they do a favor to themselves by saving some money, taking their cap hit down, and get rid of one of their star players? I don't know what the risk reward is.
Year and go for the future. Right, some of those teams that a throwaway year, and you kind of listen. There's no way we're going to make the playoffs. Let's just shoot for next year.
And I thought the Niners might be in that mode too with all the injuries, but beating Dallas, I think, gave them enough hope that there's still a chance that they can. This division, the NFC West, is literally just it's a complete toss-up. Seattle melting down, the Rams stepping up. The Cardinals, who picked the Cardinals to be this good this year?
5-4.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not only a toss-up, but you've got to keep trading to keep yourself competitive. And if you've got dead weight, you've got to cut it and get guys in there that are productive. You got to make up for the injuries. So that's why I think the Niners will be active.
NFC South, Harper's team, the Atlanta Falcons, 6-3. Who really thought about them? And the best team in football right now?
They really should be 7-2. They should have beaten Kansas City. They absolutely
the Lions are 7-1. So I mean, that kind of tells you a lot right there. It's a strange football year. As we mentioned, I think the Lions are the best team in football, along with the Chiefs. I don't know if Harper or any of you guys agree with that.
Yeah, my opinion about Detroit is when he got the job, Dan Campbell didn't say, well, we're going to do everything we can to win the Super Bowl. I guarantee it, right? It wasn't anything like that. But he did say, you're right, we're going to bite your kneecaps and we're going to fight like crazy. And he's drafted well. I think they traded some assets to get people in terms of more draft picks. Almost everyone on that offensive line is a first rounder. But he's created a toughness amongst them. And if you watch, they play hungry. They play like they haven't won 7 games. They play like their hair is on fire. And Jared Goff, in my opinion, he's on fire. My gosh, he's only at 3 or 4 different incompletions in the last 5 weeks. It's unheard of how good he's done. What a career change for him. Most people would have not a bust. I don't like using that word, but his career certainly wasn't blossoming with the Rams. Then he goes to Detroit. That was almost like put you in NFL purgatory, right? But he's turned it around, and the belief system there is like, guys, you know what? No one believes in us except for ourselves. Let's go out there and give it our best shot. And what an amazing reward for Lion fans over the past. They had 275,000 people at the draft show in the middle of the season waiting outside in Detroit. It's just amazing how that state has changed.
Wow.
That's
not since Bobby Lane have they won this many games right off the chute. I think it was
Doak Walker and those guys. I mean, nobody knows any of the other. Yeah, we know Robotron and Stafford, of course, was a great player. Would he be a Hall of Famer had he stayed in Detroit? Probably not. Now he's got a world championship, a Lombardi trophy, and he's on a good team. His numbers speak for themselves. But I'm just saying that. Detroit is different now, and they love it. It's absolutely wonderful to see. The league needs it, and I'm glad they're seeing it right now.
Hey, Harper, I know we do something real quickly, rapid fire, because Harper has been kind enough to be our special guest. Harper, what is your top moment in the National Football League? What's the pinnacle for you?
Well, we came from behind to beat the 49ers in Atlanta in a game that we had to win to get to the playoffs. And I remember jumping up and down like I was in the high school band when we scored a touchdown. I was so happy that the city itself had to win. But, I don't have any championships, guys. So that to me was just, great games that I was able to play in, or an accomplishment, or being a part of something really good.
All right. What was the 3 top teams you played for that you enjoyed the most?
Well, I was cut by the Packers. After Atlanta released me when Dan Reeves became the head coach, I signed with the Packers. What am I doing there? They had Keith Jackson. They had Mark Chmura. They had Jeff Thomason. They didn't need another tight end. Well, Keith was going to retire. So the best lesson, because every day they talked about going to the Super Bowl during training. Every day they talked about being better, how we're going to do things here the Packer way. So it was really a different, very unique experience for me.
And who are the
That
top
was
other
one.
2 teams you played for?
I enjoyed the Ravens were a very, very good team, but I was injured, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl a couple years later. The Falcons went to the Super Bowl a couple years after I was let go. Green Bay went to the Super Bowl after they let me go, but they had already been in. And so I would say, if you want me on your team and want to go to the Super Bowl, just cut me, and some good things will happen.
All right. Who were the 3 best players you ever saw?
How about the top 5? I played with
Okay.
13 Hall of Famers, and Lawrence Taylor was an amazing guy. He's a cheater, though. He wore like a cast on his forearm underneath the long sleeves and the sweatbands, and he'd hit you right underneath your chin. Carl Banks was the hardest I've ever been hit, but Reggie White, absolutely one of the best at what he did. Deion Sanders. Those are 3 right there that if you were going to start a franchise and you had anyone to pick from, other than maybe Dick Butkus or Johnny Unitas, who wouldn't want to have those 3 guys on their roster?
All right. Well, you said that. Who are the
Sanders, you mean multifaceted on that. Hey, Mike, we got to cut to our last commercial break here. All right. Okay. Here's our trivia question. What is the longest running major band? We're talking music here without a lineup change. What is the longest running major band without a lineup change? All right. And then we have a little time. Okay. So here I got one silly joke of the week. Ready? I once told a bad chemistry joke, but it didn't get much of a reaction. All right. Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back with some closing comments. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd, Russell Jackman, our special guest, Harper Lebell. Third trivia question. What is the longest running major band without a lineup change?
I'm going to say Rush.
Rush? No, that's probably a good answer. Not the right one. This I don't know if this
I don't
helps
think
you.
they've ever changed
Are
their
they
lineup.
English band?
Well, this trio goes all the way back to 1970. So they haven't had a lineup change since 1970. Now, I didn't really know this band until the 90s, probably. But ready?
Butterman?
ZZ Top.
Ah, geez. All right.
Longest running major band without a lineup change. All right.
That's awesome.
So, Mike,
and one other trivia thing I want to just throw that in there, that Billy Gibson was considered. Jimi Hendrix was asked who his favorite guitarist was, and he said it's Billy Gibson.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Love it.
Really quickly, Mike, you wanted to ask, then we got to cut out. You asked who the dirtiest players were.
Yeah,
Well,
who are the 3
learned
dirtiest
a little
players you
Taylor
played?
Well, when I
that
was
you
at
ever had
Atlanta,
to-
Jerry Glanville was the head coach when I first got there for 3 years, and we had just signed Tim McKyer. And in the paper, it said there was a USA Today. Let's go back there. Dirtiest players in the NFL, and they were ranked. And Scott Case was on our team. He was on that list. Jeff Donaldson was on that list. Tracy Eaton was on that list. Bill Fralick was on that list. And I think the only one that wasn't on it was, Bill Romanowski or something like that. So Jerry went around while we were stretching all day going, I got 4 of the 5 dirtiest players in the NFL right here on my roster.
Well, Jerry Glanville, that kind of makes sense. All right. Harper Lebell, thank you so much for joining us. Here's our thoughts for the day. So if you can smile when things go wrong, you have someone else in mind to blame. It's true. And laziness is nothing more than the habit of resting before you get tired. I can relate to that. All right. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
Thank you, U.S. military.